Do you have a quiet heart? Is there time in your schedule and the regular parts of your daily life where it's just quiet, or you can withdraw to a quiet place? And if you have children, you may be thinking, oh, that's really hard, because there are always noise. We can even teach our children to have a quiet hour, and we can as well. We just have to make time for it so often, and I have been guilty of this so much. I have been guilty of just, when I'm working or doing so, there's always like a podcast or an audio book going or music playing, and none of those things are wrong. But very rarely do we make time to be people, to have a quiet, calm heart and a quiet, still space. People that just kind of always complaining, or they're always busy, or they're always go, 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 and the peace and the joy are not residential. They come and go a lot. I think a lot of that has to do with stillness and having a quiet heart. I was challenged by Elizabeth Elliot listening to one of her sermons. And if you don't know who she was an incredible missionary, author, writer, speaker. She served in the mid 1900s in Ecuador. Her husband was killed by a tribe there trying to make contact with them to share the gospel. And she continued for 2 more years and stayed and was a missionary to the same tribe that killed her husband. And then later become a professor and a author and teacher of the gospel. And I have to tell you, I listening to a sermon of hers about having a quiet heart and the importance of being still when we do something, when we take a walk, when we maybe if you go to the beach or if you go out in the garden, like things, something always going. I do a lot of painting, and there's been so many times painting where I've just had music playing or something. I'm so challenged to let there be solitude, let there be just quietness and calmness. There are people who, you know, really just busy, 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 go, 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 and people who complain, and there's always something wrong going on. And what's missing is a peace and a joy in their hearts that is residential. People can be like, I have peace, I have joy, I have this, I have that. But a lot of times what comes out is anything but peace loving. It's anything but joy. It's very derogatory or critical, or finding wrong in just about everything. And so having that quiet heart, it stops us from stewing on so many things. It stops our minds from just spinning like on a hamster wheel about things that are going wrong. It's because that we're making time for the Lord to speak to us. Like people are like, oh, I pray, but then that's a two-way street. We need to be still. And so the Lord speaks to us through his word in the most amazing ways. And this morning, but also, let me just say, he speaks to us in the most amazing ways through his word. But if we allow that quiet time where we're just still, and it can be, you can be taking some notes, you can highlight something, read over something, maybe you go and plant something, pull some weeds, but there's just no noise. Maybe you go sit and watch a scenery. And Elizabeth Elliot was talking about, um, she used to live by the beach, and she said people would come down to the beach and in front of their house, and they would have big boom boxes. And she's like, there's the most beautiful scenery. It was the most peaceful scenery, like taken, but it was always noise. And seeing people running and jogging, there's always something in their ears. Nothing wrong with that. But maybe just like considering, are we missing out on having more of a quiet heart, and missing out on quiet times? And it is good to pass along to our children, like, let them play in quiet with nothing on or going for an hour or so and just get used to the stillness and peacefulness. I really believe that's a big part of when the Lord fills up our cup. And this morning I was reading in Mark, and Peter or James and John had said, "Hey, Lord, we want to ask you and something, and we want you to give us whatever we ask you for." And Jesus said, "Well, what is it that you want?" And they said, "So we want to sit on either side of you in all your glory." And Jesus said, "Well, you can't do that. You don't even know what you're asking." And he goes on to say, he said, you don't even know what I'm going to do. You will not be able to do. And it is not for me to decide who sits by me in my glory. That was his answer. But then he goes on to say, well, because the other 10 disciples they heard what James and John had asked, and they got mad. They're like, who do you think you are? Why should you two get to sit beside him? What about us? And, they thought James and John, they were trying to elevate themselves. And, and, and Jesus's like hierarchy. And Jesus laid out that hierarchy really, really simply and powerfully. And because there is beginning to be disputes, imagine that. Imagine there being disputes among disciples of Christ. Imagine there being disputes among, the Lord's people. Oh, that's not a new thing, is it? So Jesus said, whoever among you wants to be great must serve, must be a servant. And whoever wants to be first must be a slave to all. And he said, if you want to be the greatest among you, you must be the least among you. You must be the one serving. And I tell you what, so often it is preached and taught in our consumerism church culture, just quietness really isn't taught about. Everything is with all the busyness, all of the different programs, all the different things we have going on, and the quiet heart and serving in this type of beautiful, humble manner. It's not really celebrated or encouraged from that. When I've seen that happen, it's like, our children's ministry needs blah, blah, blah. Be a servant, be the last. It doesn't come from that place of like abundance and solitude with the Lord, quietness, and serving, like being great in Jesus's eyes. You know, that is a lot of times we want to be great in people's eyes, but being great in Jesus's eyes, that is when we have those times of solitude, the calm heart, and we're serving without a care in the world. Like, this is our joy, just to serve. You know, Imagine if one church in a town went and said to the other church, hey, we're going to come over and clean your church and do your landscaping, to bless you. Or we're going to hold a big appreciation for you. It's just a lot of times we don't see things like that. And I know that there are things like that that happen. Um, but that level of serving one another, churches are more known for their differences than what they have in common, which is Jesus, and more known for their differences than their community, loving community, quiet space, quiet time, taking time to do things, maybe some of your tasks or whatever, without all of the noise, allowing the Holy Spirit to speak to your heart. taking like all of that anxiety, all of the fear, all of this stewing, the critical, obsessive thoughts, the complaining, the anger, the pride, the strife, all of it just dropping, and all of the what about me, dropping it. What about me, serve? Where can I plug in and do that? And you don't have to have a program to serve. And also, I think that foundation of serving begins in the home and serving one another from a quiet, loving heart in the home. But often, I mean, especially with Christians, and non-Christians, it's almost a battleground in the home many times. Not all the time, but many, many times. But I believe that the more we have stillness and quietness, the more we embrace that, the more that we're going to have that peaceful atmosphere in the home, the more it's going to be a beautiful witness to the Lord. So bless you. I hope this has blessed you. And, I don't know about you. I'm going to go on a quiet walk with the Lord. I am. And then with nothing in my ears, just listening, paying attention, just being thankful, whispering a few words of adoration to Him and just listening. That's it. And this morning in this word, it was just so beautiful. It was so rich and filling. If you've been somebody who hasn't made time to read the Bible lately, you can walk that back right now. There's no time like the present, but just to sit and say, Lord, I want to grow in your nature. I want to hear from you. I want to be more like you. And He is faithful when we ask. He is faithful to give us. We have to make the time for it. Love you.